Our job is very simple, to walk us through our agenda for today. You have programs. I would just like to give us a quick summary of what we'll be doing today. We'll begin with the welcome remarks. After that, we're going to have the presentation of the state of Nigeria's children, which is a baseline. We need to understand where we are as a country and as a people, how we are treating our children. Then it will be all about the conversations that we have about mainstreaming child's rights and child protection in our conversation. So we're going to have our first panel discussion, which would be on the topic protection of children and school safety amidst increasing insecurity in Nigeria. Very critical conversation. And then the second will be about tackling poor health and nutrition among children. So the first one largely talking about protection, the second one talking about nurturing our children and extracting the best from them that they can possibly be. And then our third panel discussion would be on the impact of climate change and the socio-cultural growth of children in Nigeria. So let's have a look at some of the threats that our children could be facing over the course of the next 20 to 30 years. We'll have our Q&A session, which will be moderated by Stella and I, and then our closing would follow. So hopefully this will be very quick. So without further ado, Stella, would you like to do the honors, the first item?
Sure. Okay, so to kickstart what we believe would be impactful sessions is a man who basically needs no introduction in my line of business. He's my friend, and he's also the president of the Nigerian Guild of Editors, Mr. Eze Anaba. Let's welcome him as he presents his opening remarks, which basically will set the ball rolling today.
Good morning, all. My name is Eze Anaba, as my friend Stella said. I'm the president of the Guild of Editors. It's a privilege to stand before you today as we gather to deliberate on a critical subject, reinforcing the role of media in mainstreaming child rights. This symposium brings together an esteemed group of senior government officials, leading media practitioners, advocates, and stakeholders, all united by a shared commitment to shaping a society where every child can realize their potential. As journalists, editors, and media practitioners, we wield a unique power, the power of storytelling. The narratives we create can inspire, mobilize, and drive change. Today, I urge us all to channel this power towards a cause that demands our collective attention: the rights and well-being of Nigerian children. Nigeria is home to around 220 million people, and nearly half of them are children. While we celebrate the vibrancy and resilience of our young population, we must confront some stark realities. Millions of Nigerian children are out of school. We see them on the streets. We see them everywhere, hawking, begging. We see that they are victims of violence, abuse, child marriage, and labor. Most of them are not vaccinated, leaving them vulnerable to preventive diseases. In conflict-affected regions like the Northeast, children are forcefully recruited as combatants robbing them of their innocence and futures. These statistics are not just numbers. They are stories of children whose rights are being denied, whose dreams are deferred, and these stories must be told. As editors, as journalists, yes, we are confronted daily by existential issues. Yes, we talk about the economy. Yes, we talk about politics. We have started talking about 2027 election. The reality is that the big issue, some of the people that will participate even in that election, who would tell the story, who define the election, most of them need our attention. The media is not just a passive observer of society. It is an active participant in shaping societal norms and influencing policies. Our role in mainstreaming child rights is as important as any other stakeholder. We must uncover and amplify the voices of the voiceless by highlighting the challenges children face, from lack of education to health inequities. We can mobilize public opinion and pressure policymakers to act. Accurate data is a foundation of effective advocacy. Let us collaborate with organizations like UNICEF to ensure our stories are grounded in evidence. Beyond highlighting challenges, we must celebrate successes. Whether it's the implementation of child-friendly policies, community-driven solutions, or young change makers making an impact. These stories inspire hope and encourage replication. Today's symposium underscores the importance of partnership. UNICEF, a staunch advocate for children's rights, has consistently provided invaluable data, insights, and support to the media. Together, we can develop media campaigns that drive awareness and action. Equip journalists with data, tools, and training to report on child rights effectively. Create collaborations between media houses, civil society groups, and government to amplify advocacy efforts. Colleagues, the time for passive reporting is over. Let us embrace solution-based journalism. That is reporting that not only highlights problems, but also explores and advocates for remedies. Let us ensure that child's rights are not relegated to the margins of our news circles, but are front and center where they belong. When we leave this symposium, I challenge each of us to commit to at least one actionable step, a series of investigative reports, a partnership with an NGO, or a dedicated column for child's rights. Collectively, our efforts can write the narratives for millions of Nigerian children. In the words of Nelson Mandela, there can be no keener revelations of a society's soul than the way in which it treats its children. As custodians of information, let us be the conscience of our society. Let us use platforms to advocate for policies that prioritize education, healthcare, and protection for every child. Let us be the voice of and for our children. Thank you. That is my creed.
Thank you very much for those inspiring words. Now we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, but for us to do that, it is important that we all work as a team if we are going to make a difference. So here's something I love to do. Let's have a very quick bonding exercise. Can you please look to the person on your left and your right and greet them, but greet them in your indigenous language? Very quickly, 30 seconds. For those of us who can't speak our languages. All right. Thank you very much. That was wonderful. This is a lesson on how we must work together. Can I get somebody to volunteer their language that we can use together as a team? One person, one language. What language is that? Sorry. Ishakiri. Eriaro. Eriaro. Okay, what does it mean? Good morning. Okay, how do you say protect in your language? Okay, wonderful. And what's the response? Eriaro. Okay, what's the response to that? Eriaro. Okay, so can we all greet each other and let's say Eriaro for our children? Thank you so much. Now it's time for us to get a proper perspective with a presentation of the state of Nigeria's children. So ladies and gentlemen, could you join me in welcoming the representative of UNICEF in Nigeria, Christiane Mondiate. Let's give her a big round of applause. Say Eriaro to her.
Eriaro, and as we say in my mother tongue language, muy buenos días, queridos amigos. So, well, I stand on the existing protocols. We already are more in the mood of a team. And what I wanted to say before starting the presentation is thank you so much for being here today, our distinguished Guild of Editors, and all the media colleagues that are here, our special panelists. Thank you for this demonstration of how important children are to you. Today, what I brought is some of a very succinct photography of what millions and millions of children are facing today in the country. So let me start by saying, and can we run the presentation, by saying we can do better, definitely, for the children in Nigeria. Every year, I want to start saying, because our conductor said we are a huge country, but every year, 8 million newborns are in the country. So it is in 5 years' time, from now until 5 years, we will have 40 million more children under 5. And this is why we cannot waste time and we need to accelerate. 41 babies out of every 1,000 live births, unfortunately, do not survive due to different situations. Low weight when they are born, complications in the birth, mothers who are very weak and malnourished, teenage pregnancy and motherhood. So several factors that ends in the loss of children's life. And 40% of these children that are under 5 years are stunted. The country also has more or less 1 million children with severe acute malnutrition. And this is the worst form of malnutrition. It's children who are about to die. And then the stunting is not just children that are low weight and low height for their age. Stunting, one of the most complicated impacts is that they affect the intellectual capacity of children for life. So there is something that we need to do about this. And to save lives, and UNICEF supports the country in terms of immunization, but we still again have many challenges. 2.1 million children in the country still have no dose of any vaccine. And these children are at high risk to get any preventable disease. Next, please. So, as children grow, they go to school or they may not. And we have almost 10 million children at primary school age who are not attending school due to different factors, lack of services, security. We know that parents want to protect their child, so they prefer not to send them to school, but also poverty, which plays a critical role in this. So 10 million children in primary school, more or less 8 million plus in junior high school, need to have access and need to have the opportunity to be educated. And this is what we call child rights. There is a lot around children's rights, if this is threatening, and how this can be understood. It is simple. All children are entitled and need to have the opportunity to live, to thrive, and to develop. And those opportunities are the entitlements. And we all, adults, need to guarantee and to protect these children's right. If the child goes to school, we all know, because all of you in the media have made a lot of articles and documentaries and news around the learning challenges that Nigeria has. So 3 out of 4 children that are in school are not learning properly. They don't reach the reading and numerical and writing standards. So we need to continue working jointly to advance in this direction and improve the quality of education. I mentioned already poverty, next slide, and this plays a critical factor. This is a statistic that it's officially in all the country. The former slide, because I want to show something. The former slide, 47% of the people are in households who are poor. But inside each household, the more disadvantaged are the children. And this is what we call multidimensional poverty, which is 67%. Those are the children who have several deprivations. Either they're sick, so they don't have health, they're malnourished, they don't have water, they don't have education. So that is why we say that poverty in a household affects each member in different ways. And the most vulnerable in terms of poverty are children. Food is not enough. I mentioned some statistics already about the impacts, negative impacts of lack of food and lack of information how to better feed your child. And then open defecation, which it's a structural element that would help prevent diseases. We still have 40 million people practicing open defecation. Despite efforts, we only have one state in the entire country who is open defecation free. That is Chigawa. And yeah, applause, kudos to them. And they have kept this achievement. Katsina is coming soon, we hope. Karuna is behind, but it's still too small because we are talking about 36 states around the country. Different levels of advances. Some of them have, yes, LGAs who have been already declared open defecation free. But this needs to be informed to all the country. Media can make, for example, can trigger the competition among states so they can race to see who will be the next state that will achieve open defecation free universally inside their states. These are just examples, right? We need to do better. Next slides. I won't speak about the inflation rate. We know this has triggered so much about the access to food for families and the poverty. And of course, we have a situation of humanitarian conditions that needs responses. And more or less in those areas that are affected by the conflict in Nigeria, we are talking about almost 5 million children who are in need of humanitarian support. Now, with this summarized photograph, I want to speak about the role of media and to recognize the power that you have in the country. And we have several examples, right? You played a critical role just recently, next slide, when we had the children that were taken to court and basically they were going to be punished severely, like really. And media were one of the first ones, different media, saying, informing society and people, and then luckily the decisions were taken differently and the federal government stepped in to work, advocate, and protect children and their rights. We also have different, as said, reports and documentaries where you have been the turning point to push different decisions in the country. So you can definitely make a difference for children. Next. The whole idea is how to place children at the top of the national agenda. How you, as a very powerful sector of society, because you do play a powerful drive in the country, how you can help us keep children alive at the top of the agenda in the country, and how to call for action, how to be constant in this call for action. And there are many ways, right? First, and with many of you, we have been in some workshops around qualitative, next slide please, qualitative journalism and reporting, how to make also expanding strategies in your policy individually in each of the media corporations, how to make it deliberate, not only to make the news of the day, and there's a lot of news, sad news, but also we have to highlight positive news on children during every day or periodically, but how to make it also a longer mid-term vision where you deliberately know that you are contributing to move ahead all the stakeholders, all the sectors, all the people that should be working around the guarantee of children's rights. And they are the government, federal government, state governments. They are the religious and traditional leaders. They are the community leaders, the families, and the parents. And all of them should be equipped with either information, and you are just the perfect way and lead for this to be delivered, the necessary information to inform each one of these stakeholders that I have mentioned on how to do better for the children in the country. We were just having a very interesting conversation with the president of the Nigerian Guild of Editors, and he mentioned, well, the point is, your child only once in a lifetime. So we cannot make plans for 2030, right? To improve education or to improve health, because the child is now, and the child cannot wait, because as human beings, we grow. The opportunity that you don't give today, you will never give it in no moment. As you reach adulthood, you have a long time maybe to have different opportunities in life. But childhood is very short. It's only 18 years. And this is why we should commit not in long-term plans and results, because they are very circumstantial and contextual, but we have to commit on changes now, today, for them. Muchas gracias. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Country Rep, for putting it in facts and figures and very starkly for everyone to ponder. Well, there's something you said that my brother Eze had probably reinforced either, that the child is now, the child cannot wait. You're a child from when you're born until you're 18. As she said, we can't wait until 2030. So the conversations are going on. I hope, are these slides available for everyone? Is it on the website? Okay, so that if we're going to be partners, everybody needs to have the information. You can't be a stakeholder if you don't know. So if we have access to information, then we can do, everybody will do what it is they need to do. Okay. The next speaker is a man who has demonstrated his passion for working with children and trying to give hope and succor to those who have felt that they've been abandoned by circumstances of their birth, family, backgrounds, and to a certain extent, the people who are legally responsible for ensuring that they do not lack. Tunde Onokoya is someone who is in everybody's consciousness. I saw him on LinkedIn some weeks ago. He still hasn't responded to my message. He went to an IDP camp and he bumped into the young lady who he thought needed to be taken out of there because she demonstrated in word and deed that she was very intelligent. And he started a conversation, which I followed up on. If you go to your LinkedIn page, you will see that I sent you a request. I know I'm putting you on the spot, but we're all working together. so I will do my own part as well. But what struck me was the fact that he did what we're talking about today. He went to the IDP camp. It wasn't about the insurgency, but the collateral damage, and basically try to humanize what a lot of people don't see. When the bombs go off and you drive people away from their homes, they are left with no choice but to be put in shelters, which if we're not careful, become permanent. And through it all, he came across this young girl who, regardless of her circumstances, which had nothing to do with her, demonstrated that she's probably a budding president, a budding minister, or somebody who basically will go places. And he brought that into our consciousness. So let me welcome Tunde Onokoya. Tunde Onokoya is driven by conviction that chess can serve as a powerful educational tool to improve young lives and foster a new generation of intellectuals, even among underprivileged communities. He grew up in Ikorodu in Lagos and inspires others with his mantra, "It is possible to do great things from a small place." Without further ado, welcome Mr. Tunde Onokoya to make his presentation.
Good morning, everyone. Please accept my apologies. I will prioritize reading the messages. It's such a great honor to be here today. And I just want to say thank you to UNICEF for considering me worthy enough to share my thoughts on why we are all gathered here today. My name is Tunde Onokoya, and I'm the convener of Chess in Slums Africa. This year has been a very interesting year, and sometime back in April, I was in New York, and I decided to, do something that caught the world's attention. And that kind of like put me into this minor identity crisis. 7 years of my life, I've dedicated myself to doing just one thing, which is standing in the gap. And after the world record thing happened, that became a bit distorted because a lot of people got to know about me for the first time. Not because of the work that I do, but because of, the events that happened. And I had spent a lot of time thinking, how do I turn the spotlight into flashlights? And for a lot of us in this room, that the spotlight, is constantly on us, it can be a very overwhelming thing. You're constantly overwhelmed by messages on LinkedIn. And it's hard to respond to everyone. But you just keep trying. But the most important thing is to be able to turn that spotlight into flashlights. Because flashlights enable you to channel the attention to the things that feel deeply meaningful. And that was why I decided to go to the IDP camps, and I just wanted to spend some time with the children. So I was in Maiduguri and I was in Yola for a couple of weeks. And I was just there as a teacher. Not as a founder, not as a chess master or anything, but as a teacher. And it was a life-changing experience for me. Now, we're here today to talk about the state of the Nigerian child. I think the Nigerian child is a paradox. An interesting paradox because on one hand, the Nigerian child represents the hope of our futures. It represents the very potential of this country and of this continent. But the thing about potential is nothing if it's not realized. And on the other hand, the Nigerian child faces the staggering odds to survive. I don't want to, go over all of the numbers of the data anymore because I don't have a slide deck today. And I'm sure, the previous speakers have done absolute justice to that. But maybe the real problem is that we're looking at the numbers and we are far too removed from the reality and we're far too disconnected from the actual reality of that data. Over 100 million people in this country are under the age of 17, and half of them live in extreme poverty. And we know that there are almost 20 million children out of school. But the thing about data is, it feels very overwhelming. And when you look at these numbers, it feels like a very helpless situation. But someone told me a story once that I never forgot. He told me a story of a little child that was walking by the ocean. And, you know, the ocean had washed up thousands and thousands of starfishes to shore. And he started picking the starfishes up one by one. And he was throwing them back into the water. And from a distance, an adult saw him and told him that what you're doing doesn't matter because you will never be able to throw back all of the starfishes into the water. And the boy looked at him like this. And he picked up another starfish. And he took it up and said, it would matter to this one. And he threw it back into the ocean. And he just kept going. And he kept going, and other people saw the boy, and they joined him. And 2 people joined, and 1,000 people joined. And in no time, they were able to throw all of the fishes back into the ocean. Let us bring the crisis closer so we understand the depth of the problem we're trying to solve. It is a very hard problem, and it is a very complex one. It is why the people that are tackling it are not necessarily the corporates that are out to make profit. It is why a lot of the thinking and the talent, that are needed to solve these hard problems have to be people that are not just driven by profit, but people that are truly, truly passionate. And a lot of us in this room, we bear the burden of communicating the crisis to the people. This is the real crisis. It is not just in the numbers. And that is why I think storytelling is like data, but with soul. Data is just numbers. And I think we're too disconnected from the numbers. So we have to really, really bring it down and distill it to the stories of the one child. And we have to make people feel that there's a connection through empathy. I came across a new word recently. It's not a real word, actually. It's sonder. So sonder is a feeling. It's a sudden realization that other people around us have a life as vivid and complex as ours. And I think all of us who've experienced this, in our lives, we feel like the main character of our story, and everyone else is just a blur in the background. But the only thing that brings someone into focus is when you walk up to them and you strike a conversation. And that is how a stranger becomes a friend, becomes a lover, or an acquaintance. And this is how I think we've been in the middle of the crisis for the longest time. A lot of us in this room are already deeply aware, but our challenge is to make sure we can bring other people into that deep awareness of what the crisis is and what we need to do. I noted a few things that I'd like to share with us this lovely morning. And the first thing I would like to talk about is the potential and what is possible. And really, where do we go from here? We know what all the problems are. We have seen the numbers. But there's a challenge. And I'll say this. The future is changing, and we see how emerging technologies, climate change is changing the very fabric of our society as we know it. But there's an interesting thing I've spent a lot of time just pondering on. Because we talk about the future every time, and we talk about the children that are going to be custodians of that future. But here's the thing, and this is the real Nigerian challenge, and this is what we must all think about when the struggle of the Nigerian child comes to mind. The world, it desires our educated workforce. And we can look at the trajectory right now. Nigeria is probably going to have the youngest population in the world in the next 50 years. And Europe is getting older as time passes. So Nigeria is going to be the future workforce. It is going to be the workforce of the future. It will happen. But this is the real problem. If we have 20 million children out of school that do not have any skill, any education, how would they participate in that future? There really would be no place for them in the world if they don't have the education to contribute meaningfully to global markets. So what happens is that they will become liabilities to the future. But the world doesn't want liabilities. The world wants assets, and it desires that educated workforce to come build their economies. And when we have 20 million children out of school with no skill, with no education, and the moment they say, oh, they want to escape this place and they become desperate, the world classifies them as refugees. And it classifies them as illegal immigrants because they have no value to give. This is something we must think about very deeply. But on the other hand, Nigeria and Africa generally, there's a focus on the materials that we have, the crude oil that we have, the raw materials that we have, that the world wants. But the world doesn't want our finished product. It doesn't buy our finished product. What it wants is the raw material. But then, it wants our finished product, which is the children and the human capital that we have, but it rejects the unfinished ones that are uneducated. This is the real Nigerian challenge, that we invest more in our children and we export less raw materials. This is the greatest investment that we'd ever make in the future of the children. And this is the real crisis that we need to tackle. The second thing I noted is our role as storytellers. Now that we understand the problem and we understand the complexity of the problem, who do we hold responsible? Of course, a government that gives 15% budgetary allocation to healthcare education is not ready or is not interested in the future. And it cannot just be the same rhetoric that we keep repeating over and over again. There has to be a call to action in a way that the leaders cannot ignore. And the only way to do this is to tell the right stories. One of the things that we did at Chess and Slums, which I believe was truly, truly remarkable, was that we went to Oshodi Underbridge. Oshodi Underbridge is the most dangerous slum in Lagos. It is a place where people literally kill people. And a lot of the people there that bear the brunt of what that place has become are the children. And we forget that nobody becomes an area boy or a thug as an adult. It was the children that were neglected over time. They lose their innocence. They take to the street to survive. Society doesn't think too much of them. They call them good for nothing. Then all of that anger, they channel it towards survival. And they become the worst versions of themselves. And we made a decision to go there with a couple of chessboards because we cared more about the single story. We cared beyond the single story that we always knew. That we know that if you get to know anyone's story, we can learn to love them. And for the next 6 months, we were Oshodi Underbridge. And for the people that followed on Twitter 3 years ago, it was a truly phenomenal success story. 50 children that were neglected, that were homeless under the bridge, found their place in the world again. And journalists traveled from all over the world to tell the stories of the new chess masters. And that was how we were able to help them. But we didn't help them by reporting an event or just focusing on the crisis. We told their story of becoming. And the story of becoming was what enabled the connection for empathy. And this is our role as storytellers, that we are able to take the crisis and we build it into a story in the work that we do, in the stories that we tell, and we take it to the world and say, the state of the Nigerian child is not the hopeless one. It's not the one that we know that 20 million children out of school. It is not that we cannot change this crisis, but then we see what is possible, and we're willing to do everything it takes. And we're willing to help people understand that, just like us, the only difference or the only gap is the privilege of education that we have, the privilege of healthcare that we have, the privilege of being able to participate in systems that we have. And by being able to tell those stories, and of course wearing the cool caps for the children, we all found a basis for empathy. And that changed the lives of 52 homeless children under a bridge. And one of the most dangerous ghettos in the world, in Lagos, became a classroom for children to learn and to thrive. And I will say this finally. We have the power to change our narratives. Change doesn't come in silence. And there's a real fire right now. The world isn't conscious of it because everyone else is worried about politics, the capital markets, the global economy. Everyone is chasing. We're chasing. We don't care about the climate because we're leaving. But we need to think about the future. And the thing about this crisis is that it's a fire. Fire spreads. If you're here right now and you think you're safe, and there's fire burning in the other building, it is only a matter of time before the fire spreads to this place if it is unattended to. Imagine that you walk into a house with a pool and you see a child drowning in that pool. What would be your first reaction? To immediately jump in and save them? Would it matter if that child was yours? Would it matter if the child was someone that you knew? Our immediate reaction would be to save that child. And this, I say, is a real challenge for the Nigerian child. That all of us, in whatever capacity that we have, that we contribute meaningfully to helping them become their truest selves. Because this fire is going to spread. It may take some time, but it will spread. And I hope that when it spreads, that for the ones that have buckets, they can contribute to helping to quench it. The government, the corporate. And for the ones that have cups, they can help to pour it into the fire to quench it. And for we storytellers that have maybe spoons, and we can take some water with it and try to quench it, we are still contributing meaningfully to solving the crisis. And for those of us that have no container, but we have hands, we can take some of that water and help to quench the crisis too. And this is how we can truly change anything fundamentally and help the Nigerian child know that they can do great things from a small place. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Can we have another round of applause for Tunde Onakoya? Beautiful story. If I am correct, a few years ago, Patrice Evra came under the bridge, did he not? Sorry, Tunde? He did. Oh, and that was wonderful, such inspiration. The next item on our agenda is the panel discussion. If we can get some of our chairs up on the stage, we would really appreciate that. Okay, while the chairs are being set up, I would just like to give us a bit of background or tell us about what we'll be talking about. We're talking about the protection of children and school safety amidst increasing insecurity in Nigeria. It's a very heavy topic, and I don't mean to bring everybody down, but this is how important it is. I would like to very quickly share my personal story. On the 25th of February 2014, we received the shock of our lives when we received the news that in Yobe State, in a secondary school, 59 boys were gunned down by Boko Haram. How many of us remember that story? Very few, because we moved on. Only a few days later, on the 14th of April, 2014, I was doing a morning show on a radio station in Abuja, and that happened to be a watershed moment for me in my broadcasting career, because prior to that, I don't know that a lot of people in the city cared who I was. But on that show at about 6:15, a caller called and said, there is a bomb blast in Abuja at the Nyanya Park right now. Those were the words. I will never forget it. And I said, what? You mean some kind of explosion? Because I didn't believe him. And he said, no, not some kind of an explosion. A bomb blast at the Nyanya Park in Abuja right now. And I followed the story. My whole show changed. And what proved to be a moment of glory for me in broadcasting proved to be the saddest day for quite a number of people, because they died. Only a few hours later, we received news that over 200 girls were kidnapped in Chibok. 14th April 2014. These are numbers, but I don't remember the numbers. I remember one name, Amina Ali. That was one of the first girls to have been found after that event. As media people, let us not just focus about the numbers. 59, over 200, 10 million. They don't mean nothing, but the names do. Who are these children? Who are these people? I think one of the compelling ways that we can make our story known is to try to understand and try to know the faces and the names behind the figures. Are we ready? Okay. Safe Schools Initiative was a product of those two sad events. I don't know how far we've gone with that. Most of our secondary schools are still unfenced. So there is a lot that we have to talk about as media people. Let's have our panelists. I would like to introduce them quickly. Our stage is set. So, ladies and gentlemen, our first panelist is a highly esteemed administrator and current OPEC governor for Nigeria, with a rich background in public service across various ministries, including petroleum resources and foreign affairs. Let us welcome to the table Ambassador Gabriel Tanimu Aduda. We also have an accomplished IT expert. He's retired federal permanent secretary and a passionate advocate for youth and children development. Let us welcome Dr. Mrs. Ibokun Odushote. Our third panelist is a distinguished civil servant and educationist with over 20 years of experience in the Nigerian education sector. She began her career teaching gifted students at the Suleja Academy and has since held pivotal roles, including team lead for scholarship selection at the Federal Scholarship Board. Ladies and gentlemen, the Deputy Director, Education Support Services, Uche Onwama. Fourth panelist, an award-winning journalist, editor, media entrepreneur with over 3 decades of experience in Nigeria and also in international journalism. Let us welcome the Managing Director, Editor-in-Chief of The Niche, Ikechukwu Amechi. Finally, I would like us to welcome our moderator, who is a distinguished media veteran with a remarkable career spanning several decades at the Guardian newspapers, where he served as managing director and editor-in-chief until his retirement in March of 2024. Our moderator today, Martins Oloja. Let us give him a big round of applause. I will now yield the stage to our moderator as he navigates us through 30 minutes of our panel discussion. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I will just go straight to business. We do not have the time. Welcome, Ambassador. Madam School Administrator, you're welcome. And other panelists. My colleague, I think the pressure, let me disclose to you first, the pressure is on you. I have been loaded to put the pressure on you because what we are doing here today is about the media, about how to engage the media to be interested in affairs of our children. First and foremost, as a media practitioners, as journalists, as reporters, as editorialists, they've been accusing us of focusing too much on politics. But we're just discussing that before this event, that we are also beginning to recognize journalism as business. It's business. So we focus these days on what will bring in money because it's very, very, very important to make money, to remain in business. The cost of operation is very high. We need to get people to understand that social service now, my foot. It's important to deepen our understanding about how the media works. Now, the cost of newsprint, this newsprint for newspaper that you see is not available in the country. It's imported from Sweden in euro, not even in dollar. So you know what it means now. For those in the electronic radio and television, they have regulators they pay, license fees, and others. And then platform owners like DSTV. It is very difficult. However, the child in this circumstance has become like a victim and is neglected. Even when people were talking, when the MCs were talking, they didn't mention Leah Sharibu, that the Guardian 2019 dubbed as the goddess of resistance, as the person of the year. She is still, where is she? Since 2018. Yeah, she's still in the gulag. It's nowhere to be found. We hardly remember her, just like some other victims. So we will begin this way. We are curating these to draw attention to the fact that we need to pay attention to the future of our country. And it is the children we are paying attention to. And we are going to ask how most of the panelists here, how we can get the media to pay more attention from their own experience in various sectors where they have worked. That is the point. We are not at war. We are to do some contextualization of how we can relate better to pay attention to our children. Because if we do not report these issues, it means that they don't occur. That is the purpose. And I will begin from the media. I will begin from the man who is to speak for the industry, is not, he has been a reporter, he has been an editor, he's now a manager. He has seen it all. He's been a title editor. My brother Amechi, you have heard what they have said about us, that we have not been able to pay attention to issues that concern our children. As Joe said, Leah Sharibu, one of them. We are beginning to forget them. Even the Chibok girls, we are beginning to forget them. We don't know what they go through. There is somebody in my own house that we picked up from even an IDP camp, is trying to get admission to one of the federal universities. I will not mention it for now. And they got some mark that is to get her into that federal university on merit. And the poor girl is from Borno State. It's not got admission as we speak. But we'll talk about that one later. But what do you think, my brother, is the reason we have not been able to pay attention to issues that have been highlighted here concerning children are being kidnapped, they are out of school, they are victims of violence here and there, they are malnourished. One of the members of a panel for accreditation of a teaching hospital in one of the northern states recently said a woman, a retired consultant pediatrician, sent some photographs to some newspapers, but they were not published, about malnourished children in the teaching hospital that were shown. So we find it difficult really to put this at the center of news. From your own experience, what do you think are some of the reasons that people should understand today, and what can we do to pay attention to this?
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator Martins. And also thanks to UNICEF and the Nigerian Guild of Editors. The question you asked me is not as straightforward as you make it to be. It's not a question of whether the media has neglected children or not. If you ask me, I will say we have not neglected Nigerian children. And also the issue you raised earlier about the conversation you said you heard about perhaps over concentration of our reportage on politics. I will also say, Martins, that the problem we have largely in this country is the failure of leadership. If we get our leadership recruitment process right and get the leaders who begin to prioritize what matters most, some of these other problems, we will solve them. So if people are paying attention to politics and to who leads us, I think it's also a good thing. Because if you don't get it right politically, who leads us, you're not going to get anywhere. Now, coming back to the question you've asked, and why I said it's not quite correct to say that the media neglected children and the problems that they face. Look, there's so much at stake here. And the plight of children in Nigeria goes beyond even the adoptions, which are recent issues. Of course, our brother cited from 2014 when the news of the Chibok girls, and even before the Chibok girls, the other boys, students that were murdered in cold blood. And everybody has forgotten about them now because people have moved on. They have moved on not because the media refused to highlight the issues, but they have moved on because as a country, we have developed the culture of moving on, Our attention span is so little that, in fact, even when you want to go back to a story, people will ask you, what is even this thing? Can't you talk about some other things? We have left the priorities. And why I said it goes beyond the kidnappings, which are recent issues, is that the abuse of the Nigerian child in school goes beyond, the abuse of the Nigerian child in school goes beyond the DC. Sometime this year, there was a report of a 3 or 4 year old child that was flogged to death in a school in Delta State. I don't know if you remember, but we have moved on again.
Okay.
So,
Just a minute. We continue from there. We always move on, and that is the reason we are here. No, yes, leadership will get right, but we are talking about our own leadership, even in the media. Now, our leadership in focusing on children, we will continue from there. We are talking about leadership that one of us, not too long ago, just focused on school children in Oyo State. Just forget about the medium or the story, the message. In Oyo State, said they focused on the children, the squalid condition of the school, and so on and so forth. Ambassador, we are coming to you. You have been in the you started from the development sector. Even anti-corruption agency, I know you. He has no state in Nigeria. He's a native of Abuja. But he has seen it all. You are an ambassador. You are now a diplomat. You have been a permanent secretary. You represent people we call duty bearers who should look into the condition of these children, the budget for these children. You are, by the grace of God now, and even a Minister of Women Affairs as a permanent secretary. You have had this journalist complaining about some of these things like this. Just from your own perspective of how journalists have been dealing with even your ministry, as you have seen so many things. What do you think can be done to improve the quality of reportage? Because you have desks there. What do you think that the journalists who just spoke now should note about the people who even report affairs in the ministry, so that there can be a better relationship between the media and the duty bearers that we are supposed to put on their toes to work better? We don't have the time. You just summarize it for us, how you think this can be improved upon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Martins. Permit me to say all protocols duly observed. I think one of the things that we need to pay a lot of attention to in dealing with the issues of welfare of the children, protection and safety, as having to do with media, is that first we need to build interest. interest is very, very key. You made a statement in passing, jokingly, Albert, and then where you said media has been monetized, and it's all about how much and what have you. That is what we also see, even in this sector. You realize that when we have activities that border on safety and protection of children and whatever it is, we call in the media. They'll come in for that very day, get the work done, get the news out, ask you for payment as they leave, and then after that, you don't hear about it again. But I think we need to go beyond that to build interest in the sector, for us to know that we're dealing with a cachet of individuals that will determine the future of Nigeria. And the moment we do that, I think we want to see the media get involved in this struggle to better the lot of the Nigerian child. And how can the media do that? We will be happy if we can see columns in your news items and articles that are dedicated to children on daily basis, on weekly basis. Well, because the truth of the matter is that practically every day there is one form of story or the other concerning the Nigerian child. A lot of you are seated here today and you're aware of what happened with the children that were held in incarceration. I saw that earlier when the rep was doing her address and all that, but you do not know the role that we played. I must give it to the media. It was the media that put it out, and then someone drew my attention to it. I was just paying a visit to Ibrahim when I received it like 3 times in less than 10 minutes. And immediately I called the Solicitor General. I said, what is going on here? Because we were not aware. And in less than 30 minutes, we had reached out to the Attorney General of the Federation, and that was where this whole thing started that Friday night. And by that Saturday, we had to take the file away from the police to the Office of the Attorney General, and these children were released the next week, Monday, Tuesday. So now the media helped us. I saw that from, I think someone sent it to me on Instagram and things like that, and immediately we got into action. Now, what are we trying to say? For want of time, the truth of the matter is that we have this displacement of children that we must deal with whether we like it or not, and which will affect the future of Nigeria in very, very serious negative terms. So we will be very grateful if we can see some more personal interest, if you like, or sustained and targeted interest in reporting matters that have to do with children from the media, you know. And then because what that does is that it helps to amplify the voice, not only of the children, but also of awareness creation that helps to bring to light the evils against the children and how those evils can be corrected. So we're not only talking about amplifying the circumstances surrounding the issues, but also what are the preventive measures that need to be taken and what are the responsibilities that needs to be placed when and where so that we can effectively reach out to deal with these issues. So yes, the media has a lot to do. It is not enough to say, well, you just come in. Once off we hold an activity, you report it, and then you move on. I like the word that both of you have used. We have moved on. Question is, are we really supposed to move on from matters that have this depth of humanitarian weight that we need to carry as human beings?
Thank you very much. Just hail him for even the... Thank you very much for that perspective. Madam, we come from school perspective. We come to, the security is very, very important. So many people are spending money on security of the children in our different schools, because they just go to schools in different parts and pick up these children. And then there have been allegations that some of these issues are even underreported, and some are not well represented in various schools. Quickly, what do you think we can do to improve this relationship, especially to draw attention to safety issues and safety of our children in school, and even safety of the school equipment and what have you we use in training these children in a way that will improve the relationship between the media and society?
Thank you very much, sir. Like my PAMSEC said, all protocols duly observed. The relationship between the media and the government in terms of reporting safety issues is very, very, very important. First of all, we need to understand ourselves. We need to work together, and because the government is doing a lot to keep our schools safe. But most times the media, I don't want to reiterate what my permanent secretary said, but I just want to state that, yes, we work together. The government is doing a lot, and most of them are not reported because most times maybe the media is not present and the person present is not willing to report it, or they're here and they don't come to get the accurate facts. And it's very important to get the accurate facts because the public depends on the media. It's what they hear that will make them believe the government. So we need to check for the accurate facts. This has been done. A national policy on safety, security, and violence-free schools has been signed by the government, admitted for use. It's being implemented in various corners of Nigeria. And then things are happening. And if you hear, and we have gone around to train almost all education stakeholders in the 774 local governments of Nigeria. We have done this, but no media has come to ask us, how have you done it? We have also done it in some states. But one thing, I give state governors kudos. They brought in some media at the beginning of these trainings. And then at the end, we don't see them to report actually what was done. But my take here is that we need to work together. Please work with us to get the accurate facts. We have done a lot. And then when you're reporting what you have heard, we need you to cross-check, make sure it's accurate, make sure it's not sensitive to the child and to the public, and make sure that you get the real facts from maybe the Ministry of Education that has done it, the school principal, or the state where it is done, the accurate people that took part in that implementation.
It's okay. Thank you very much. Before we even get to Madam here, Mr. Amechi, they have said so many things that we have not done here and there. Do you have any question from any of them as a practitioner? Do you want to just, in one sentence, just react to some of the issues they have raised in the way we deal with them?
Yeah, you see, that's basically what I see every time in the country. We push the issues back to the media. We blame the media for almost everything. Look, the issue of reporting, I know that there are so many newspapers that have dedicated desks for women and children issues. Martins, it has always been there. Journalists do the best they can. Look, the only way the media can do the job that everybody expects them to do, particularly on the issue of the child rights, is to collaborate with NGOs, with government, with religious leaders, and even with community leaders.
Do you think we collaborate enough these days?
We are doing so, because I don't see how the ministry, for instance, if they have a function and they will invite Guardian, and Guardian will say they won't cover it, or even they cover it, they misrepresent what was said. It goes back to what I said earlier about leadership. There must be this handshake must come from everybody, because what we are talking about is the future of this country. The Nigerian child is going through a lot, and the government must collaborate with the media that is already doing much. PAMSEC talked about the children that were arraigned on terrorism charges. It was the media that brought it to the fore.
Yes, it's okay. It's okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Just let's clap for the media for bringing it to. Madam, you are not part of this setting. You are on your own in observing this thing in the private sector way. From what has been going on between the media and these people, what do you think, where do you think is the disconnect in a way that we can actually collaborate better as we move on? Because we do not have the time really. But in safety, in reporting safety of children, in mainstreaming this thing, to talk about the role of the media and the rights of children to benefit from even governance system, to benefit from safety that they need for them to grow, in benefiting from food and nutrition security that we talk about. What do you think is where is the disconnect in the discussion we have had so far?
Thank you, Martins, and thank you, UNICEF, for granting me this opportunity. For not less than 22 years, we have emphasized on information technology. And we have carried children all over the nation. What we were saying at the beginning, because everything about internet in Nigeria, when we started, the concentration was on the media. The program that brought the .ng to Nigeria had Channels Television at its inception as part of AIT and a number of other media people. I remember that at the beginning, one of the things that we were doing was to train, to begin to create awareness that the internet, information technology can help us in resolving a lot of issues. And I feel that with the level that we have gone in terms of IT right now, between the children and the media and all the operatives, officials of government and the rest of it, IT has a mighty role to play. There's a part of insecurity that we don't pay attention to. The child online insecurity. You have so much that is happening with the children online. And the media needs to help to bring this to the fore. That does not require physical meetings and going up and down. There's so much to be done. And a number of civil society organizations are training people, are creating awareness. We had a conference in Abuja just last week, a summit on child online protection. You expect the media to take that up, to amplify that, and ensure that people get to understand the troubles that they could have. And there are some of these issues of physical insecurity that technology can help us to resolve. And we need to have understanding of all that. The time is quite short, but if the media will get to understand that just as you have started to utilize technology in broadcasting, in doing so many things that you're doing, and it has made it a lot faster, a lot easier. You can communicate with people as fast as possible. Then we will be able to concentrate more on how do we resolve issues with our children and pay more attention to our children. Even UNICEF needs to create more awareness, support awareness creation amongst the media concerning, and particular about child online protection.
Thank you very much, Madam. We do not have the time, and I think we need to just hail them for what they have discussed. We do not have the time to get more. We already understand where the issues are. The relationship and this conversation will continue after now. But the last statement was very profound because we are in the world of digital technologies. And our children Sometimes we can't reach them. We don't know what they are doing. She has now called on the media to pay attention to what maybe is happening in Australia at this moment, where they are trying to protect their children from cyber issues, from cyber attacks, and some of those things like that that they think are destroying their children. Thank you very much, and God bless you. Thank you. Thank you, madam. Thank you. Thank you. We will continue from there. We do not have the time. Final words? So I should give them final words?
Okay, we are trying to make it because of time, yes. We're running behind time, but so thank you very much, distinguished members of the panel and our moderator. So as they take their pictures, I will wait until that is done so that I can introduce the next panel, and also a brief video of nutrition intervention, which I believe has been put together by UNICEF. Thank you very much, distinguished members of the panel and moderator. So it is my pleasure to introduce the next panel, which basically is going to be discussing tackling poor health and nutrition amongst children. And moderating that panel is Dr. Chinonso Egemba, who is popularly known as Aproko Doctor. He's a Nigerian-born certified medical doctor and also an award-winning content creator. He's dedicated himself to educating people on healthier living through social media. He's built a community of more than 6 million followers. He's also the executive director of the 100K Club and focuses on health education. And with this, he has facilitated cervical cancer screenings for almost 411 women, treated 70 women, and covers more than 30 million in medical bills. Thank you very much for being with us. Okay, so it is my pleasure to also welcome the panelist, Uju Rochas Anwoka, who is a special assistant to the president on public health and the founder of USAVE Foundation. She's continued to lead efforts to combat malnutrition and improve health outcomes for women and children. She's coordinated Nigeria's Nutrition Core Working Committee and the 774 Nutrition Initiative. She holds degrees in biochemistry, mathematics, public health, and is also pursuing a law degree. Let's give her a resounding round of applause. So it shows you that she is an asset, and we hope that she can be utilized to ensure that we keep this in everyone's consciousness. The next panelist is Olubenga Olaiwole. He's a national program coordinator and technical lead for Rotary International's Polio Plus program in Nigeria. He holds a BSc and MPH from the University of Ilorin and is also a graduate of the Federal Gifted Education Program. He has more than 15 years of experience in public health consulting. He's worked with various developmental partners, including UNICEF and Rotary, and also has experience in the financial services sector. Thank you very much for joining us. Ijoma Kokola is a seasoned media professional with 27 years experience. She's currently the Deputy Editor-in-Chief at the News Agency of Nigeria, and she's continuing to play a pivotal role since 2013 in the area of quality control. So it is her responsibility to ensure the integrity of news outputs and also leading the Metropolitan Desk. She's a master's degree holder in mass communication from the University of Lagos and holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Nigeria of Nsukka. She's committed to impactful journalism and is further exemplified in her participation in a special immersion program on maternal and child health reporting by Development Communication Network. Thanks very much for joining us as she comes up. Okay, we also have Olumide Yonda, who is a seasoned media entrepreneur. He's a mentor and a journalist with more than 2 decades of experience. He's focused on investigative and entertainment journalism, and he's also the CEO of Mighty Media Plus Network. He oversees the popular online platform QEDNG. He holds a BA in history from the University of Ibadan and a master's in international law and diplomacy from the University of Lagos. His career highlights include roles at Temple Magazine, Punch Nigeria Limited, and Independent Newspapers Limited, where he served as editor of Saturday Independent. He's also actively involved in various professional organizations, including the Guild Corporate Online Publishers, where he's the Deputy Secretary General. Olumide's career also involves mentorship and capacity building, where he continues to influence the Nigerian media landscape. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator and distinguished members of the panel. And just before this panel session starts, as we said earlier, there is a video which is going to be focused on nutrition intervention. Please, do we have the video? So just before they start, we're going to play that video and then the session will start. Please, let's remind you, Mr. Moderator, we have 30 minutes. We need to keep
Video.
the questions quite short.
Kau kasalandu dajino. Kasalandu ro kau ya kagap suba wono chi. Dai wenge shakadi. Meri modu herodu. Dondi zana kam do sur dondi zana. Are dondi zana chamba gai dondi zana gai rono. Wenge ikana are. Karo ni kam duna ikana are. Wajono matuma gai wenge parola iken pasar diken gai ro. Wenge ikana are.
She came to our facility very, very wasted with a weight of barely 2 kg. So she wasn't having much complication except for anorexia. She hasn't been eating. Obviously, a child of that age, the only thing she could take is breast milk. And then that of the grandmother wasn't enough. So when we admitted her, we placed her on the routine antibiotics, and then we commenced feeding her with F100 dilute. The weight has improved remarkably. The baby is doing fine. She weighs about 2.5 kg now. One of the things we did, we ensured that we initiated SST, which is supplemental suckling technique. We also ensured that we commenced wet nursing. That is someone that is not the mother of the child, now breastfeeding the child. Initially, the breast milk wasn't really coming out, but we supplemented with other medications, which really improved. So we are very sure that even when we discharge them home, the wet nursing will continue, and then hopefully the child will do well until she reaches a stage whereby she could possibly commence eating family food.
Kuju bai na lai nama andia salam za faru kelewa salai le kelewa ande salai na ye kelewa ando salai do le yema to ku yikana are karo ikutula yanzu ma ba kutula fayin gaido no yikana yirkin gaido no ku aka yiro walzu kelewa ande salai do salam za le yema kujun zu fayin we to mara kuju fayin.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And I don't count it lenient to be able to moderate a conversation as important as this. I think it goes without saying that we are faced with a stark reality. And a stark reality that affects not just now, because according to the country rep, the child is now, but also affects our future. I think I'll start with you, Yeah. Now, just so we have 30 minutes, we'll try to keep our responses, and I'd like us to focus on practical solutions. There are over 9 million children in Nigeria who are moderately malnourished, and over 3 million are severely malnourished. Just for the context of the audience, a child who is severely malnourished is about 10 to 12 times at risk of death than a healthy child. Now, with this background, do you think that the media is adequately representing the crisis that we currently have around malnutrition in Nigeria?
Thank you very much for the question. Aproko Doctor, can I call you that? Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please permit me to stand on existing protocol. I had actually hoped, and that's why I left one seat, so that you would put pressure on the media persons like in the previous panel, but you chose to start with me. But looking at the severity of the issues, you did mention the numbers. I believe that rather than focusing on media projecting the crisis, our focus should be on media projecting the solutions. So the crisis in tandem with the solutions. Because if you look at talking about the statistics alone, we won't get our solutions from that. And so to answer your question, the media, no, hasn't done enough. They have tried somewhat, but more work can be done. And this can be done, you were talking about, practical measures through amplifying the voice of the local leaders. I would go into 774 shortly, which is a program that has been endorsed by the National Economic Council to ensure we have a bottom-top approach in addressing the challenges of malnutrition in Nigeria, ensuring that it's people-centered, it's inclusive, it drives for multi-sectoral collaboration. But if the media can help amplify the voices of traditional rulers, religious rulers, leaders at the local government level who are the trusted leaders, I think that would help us. Practical solutions. Can we have a nutrition alert system, a nutrition watchdog, where media is projecting what's happening to the RUTF in Sokoto, the ready-to-use therapeutic foods? What is happening in terms of holding accountable the leaders? Again, I keep saying this, local government, states, and even down to the federal, and not politicizing a lot of things. Because if you look at the Nigerian landscape, we've tend to focus more on the politics than really the issues themselves. And it takes away from the attention of malnutrition for children. And rather than talking about how women can be empowered in the society by nutrition education and how children can have access, we tend to focus more on the politics around things. So some work has been done by the media, and I give them kudos, but more can be done. And that will be having a balance between mentioning the statistics, which should be human-focused, really, like I've heard a lot of times, but simultaneously speaking to the solutions, amplifying areas where our interventions have worked. I know recently UNICEF, in partnership with Kirk, had given in kind about 3 million commodities, the MMS. Project things like that. Areas where multi-sectoral collaboration has worked, whether through Ministry of Agric, Education, Health, Social Protection, working together to improve nutrition activities. Yes, naturally, the statistics haven't been so good holistically, but there are pockets. Take Jigawa, for instance. Can media amplify that so that there can be a replication of such interventions across other local government areas or states, of course, making sure that it is cultural, sensitive to what each local government needs.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that succinct answer. And I think your response perfectly segues into my next question. My next question will be directed to Mr. Olumide. The recent reports has, revealed systemic failures, especially in addressing malnutrition and food insecurity, including the gaps in healthcare and grassroots intervention. And Ms. Uju just mentioned holding leaders responsible. Why does it seem that our media houses are not investing in investigative journalism to expose the root causes and name the culprits that are responsible for this? And what needs to change for the media to play a transformative role in breaking the cycle of neglect?
Thank you very much. I was almost clear that the media was on trial after listening to the first panel. Thank you, and I must also thank the previous speaker for actually saying that we should look more at solutions instead of problems. So, but to go back to your question, why does it seem so? There are a lot of things. There are a lot of things competing for priorities, and I'm going to say that I will say that to you as a practicing journalist. That beyond, I'm looking at all the things that are in front of me. I'm looking at the basket. I'm looking at corruption. I'm looking at politics. I'm looking at things that that people are interested in. Not that the media is not interested in these things, because you'll also find out that most times the people that are responsible for creating these problems are pointing their hands at the media. So why is it difficult? You asked about investigative journalism. It is time-consuming. You require a lot of investments. You require a lot of training. And you require collaboration, the kind of collaboration that NGE is having with DAME and UNICEF to do this, because the media knows its role. Don't let us take it for granted, because anybody who has a winking acquaintance with children, with health, we know that one of the most important international laws ever passed is the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which is one of the most, in terms of treaties all over the world, which is one of the most ratified by governments all over the world. And I think Articles 24 and 27 specifically speaks about health, nutrition for the child. So the media knows this. So why is it difficult? I've said to you that sometimes we need what is competing for attention. Because in a country like Nigeria, where we also throw figures around, the figures you get most times, the figures may even, like as we've seen with insecurity, Boko Haram and this stuff, sometimes it even begins to desensitize people that you become so used to hearing these figures, you don't even see the big deal in these things anymore. But what we need to do really from the standpoint of the media is to be more aware of what is going on, in terms of investigative journalism, to invest more. And I must say to you, just like you two know, that it is not something that is so cheap to do. You heard about someone that was arrested yesterday. Yeah. Those are some of the things that the media has to deal with. You deal with political backlash, you deal with backlash from business and all that interests that are like hurdles to what you need to do. But for us, just like to piggyback on what she said, it is not just about what the hurdles are, but what are the solutions. And one of them will be to also do more advocacy, also invest in that desk, also to train some of our reporters to understand what they also need to cover, because it's a different thing to put somebody on a beat. It's a different thing for the person to also understand what that beat is all about. And also to know that everything is not about politics and stories that have immediate appeal. Because the reason why it appears as if we forget about things is not because we don't report those things. It's because we are used to breaking news. Even the stuff that we have been talking about, the trial of the underaged, it is not that problem has not been solved. What we have managed to do is to get those kids out of prison. But there are several hundreds, thousands of children in prison. So because we've been able to bring these ones after because of the noise, does not mean that the problem of kids in detention has been solved. But I think we need to do more engagement, do more and do more than anything, do more collaboration.
Thank you very much. I'm glad that you mentioned do more collaboration. And you also mentioned something about the chances of Nigerians becoming desensitized to data. And permits me to add one or two on that aspect. You know, one of our previous speakers, Tunde, mentioned that rather than focusing on the data and the numbers, because people just get desensitized to these things. If you say 40%, so a lot of people, 40% doesn't make any sense. 40% is just numbers. But when we storify this data, we're able to permit me to use this word, manipulate the emotions of people for good. Because I believe that as the media, we have a responsibility with the power of persuasion to be able to persuade people for good. But thank you for highlighting the problems on why these things do not currently happen. And I'm sure that, you know, everyone who's watching is paying attention to how we can play this part. And that leads me to my next question, which is directed to Mr. Olubenga. There seems to be an issue that nobody knows about, or people have heard about it, but it doesn't make sense, right? And that is about, you know, polio, because a couple of years ago, Nigerians have always been talking about polio. One day we heard that Nigeria was polio-free. We went online and everybody was celebrating that. And then everything became silent. And now we're receiving stories of multiple outbreaks. How critical is it for the media to receive accurate, evidence-based, timely information from organizations like yours, Rotary, UNICEF, and the government so that we can pursue quality journalism and ask the right questions at the right time? Otherwise, we might conclude that we're misled since information is not being provided on time.
Thank you very much for the question. Regarding polio, I think it was a big mistake for us to have celebrated the certification of a polio-free Africa the way we did. Understandably, it was a tremendous achievement. Being the second to the last region in the world to be so certified was something that we're all happy about, and I think we went a little bit overboard in celebrating the fact that Africa had finally become polio-free. And one of the things that my former chairman, Dr. Funshaw, always complains about the fact that we who are in public health, we do a lot of technical talk and we talk in jargons, we speak a lot of things that most people don't understand. We did not take our time, those of us who are in the development sector, to actually explain to people that there are different kinds of polio. We did not take our time to explain what we were celebrating. What we were celebrating was actually the regional elimination of white polio from Africa. It was a great achievement, actually, but it did not mean that we did not have other issues relating to polio, such as the circulating variant of polio. So while we were celebrating Africa, I was privileged to visit the executive governor of a state in southern Nigeria recently, and when we went to, the first thing he told us was, "Why are you people here? I thought you people said we no longer have polio." So if the governor of a state does not know that we have polio in Nigeria, then we have a big problem. Now, I'll put this in context for you. In the year 2016, Nigeria had gone 3 years without recording a case of the white polio virus. And all of a sudden, news came that we had some cases in Borno. And how many cases were those? There were 4. And 4 cases generated international attention. Journalists were coming from everywhere in the world. People were scandalized. Nigeria was in the news everywhere. But somehow, this year, officially from the National EOC, we are reporting 79 cases of polio. And nobody, yes, officially, 79 cases of polio based on the last surveillance report we got. 79 cases of polio. Now, whether you call it circulating variant of polio or you're calling it white polio virus, the truth of the matter is that a child is involved. A child has been crippled or killed by the polio virus. It does not matter to the parents what form of polio killed that child or crippled that child. All they know is that their lives have been permanently altered as a result of the polio virus. And so we as development partners, we have not yet, and this is one of the things that we discussed at the Advocacy, Communication, and Social Mobilization group of the National EOC for polio in Abuja. We have not yet codified our messaging enough for media partners to understand that even though we celebrated something in 2020, we still have a big problem. And that problem also came about, sorry, one more thing before I just drop the mic, because unfortunately for us, that celebration came at a time that the world was going through a global pandemic. If you recall, everywhere was on lockdown. We locked down everywhere. Nobody was going out. And the result of that was that we did not have vaccination campaigns. We did not have house-to-house campaigns. Routine immunization was at a standstill. And so coming out of the pandemic, when activities commenced again and people started to move around, travel up and down again, we already had a large pool of susceptible children to the polio virus that we were already celebrating, that we were done with. And so what followed it was 419 crippled children in Nigeria. Remember I said 4 in 2016 was an outrage.
Yeah.
Now 419, and we did not hear of it in the media because our messaging was wrong.
I have another question on messaging, but before I get to that, because it's a very important question, it surrounds anti-vaxxers and vaccine hesitancy. I want to ask Mrs. Ijoma, for when we look at the media now, you know, the previous panel mentioned that one of the drivers is profit, right? And because of these, one of the things that we've noticed is sensationalism. when it has to do with media. But I want to ask you, how can editors reframe malnutrition not just as a humanitarian crisis, but as an emergency, a national emergency, because our future is at stake, right? Shouldn't the media's failure to make this a consistent headline be seen as a betrayal of the children whose stories we are claiming to champion right now?
Okay, thank you so much. I want to observe all protocols. I want to state that the media in Nigeria has never failed in doing its job when it comes to news dissemination, even as regards nutrition and child health. But I want to also say that if we, instead of, we need to humanize now. Yeah. Instead of unnecessarily escalating, let's humanize our stories. Instead of sensationalizing, let it be evidence-based. Instead of hitting headlines that are screaming, let's paint a true picture of a child, malnourished, the rigors, the obvious implications. Let us find solutions. Let's report solutions. If we can't get egg and meat to feed a child, we can get vegetable. I want us to begin to employ or adopt solution journalism in what we are doing as regards malnutrition and in every other aspect of our reporting. If school gardening can help, let us look into what has been happening. Let us see how we can improve school gardening. I also suggest that we look into infant welfare clinic. There used to be what is known as infant welfare clinic. I'm not sure it exists. The essence of that clinic is your child must not be sick. Just bring the child for monitoring. By the time the child is monitored, the indices will show if he's growing or not growing in terms of malnutrition. The child can be referred to a dietitian. The child can be referred for support. So these are the areas I feel, as journalists, as editors, we can look in solution. Screaming headlines are not helping us. Problem reporting will still be there. We must report problems because they are facts. But let's focus more on solutions. Let's look into what is happening in school feeding programs. Yeah. We can be participant observers. Let's see the quality of food. Let's see the implementation. Most times, government has good intentions. Government has good policies. But on the line of, along the line of implementation, things go wrong. Let's follow up.
Yes, I'm so glad that you mentioned government has good policies. When it comes to implementation, that's usually where we have the problem, because, and that directs my question as we're rounding up to Mr. Joe. Nigeria is usually policy rich, but implementation poor. Now, what steps can the media now take to be able to change this narrative, to ensure that our implementations match our policies, and ensure that the implementations of those policies and then hold the people accountable? Because part of your answers was we need to hold leaders accountable.
Thank you again for that question. In fact, when the last two speakers were sort of explaining their point, I was nodding because, like you mentioned, we're very good with policies, best brains. Implementation becomes a challenge because, not because work isn't going on implementing, but hyper-fragmentation across sectors and also across tiers of government. And I think that's a bigger issue. She had just mentioned as to the school feeding program. If we have the Ministry of Agric working together with the Ministry of Health, and you also mentioned getting children, even if they're not sick, or gotten to the level of MAM or SAM, which is severe acute malnutrition. If we have PHCs, and this is what, again, the 774 is looking to do, being the focal point, where mothers know that when they come, they will get access to seedlings. They will get access to learning, education across how to properly make nutritious food for their kids, leveraging on groundnut, millet, the Tom Brown, how to make Tom Brown. They will be incentivized to go to the PHCs, and by that action, they would be able to get their children to get the relevant checks that are important. So this is like a preventive measure. And for implementation, what also helps is strengthening the governance level, again, the bottom-top approach. We have the Local Government Council on Food and Nutrition. In a lot of local government areas, these are virtually inactive. How do we reactivate this? And this is what we're discussing. Getting the local government chairman, the traditional leaders that are there, give them the sort of interventions that they must meet or they should meet. Why would they meet it? Because it's going to be incentivized as well. Even though that shouldn't be the natural angle, but again, it's the country. You have to find out what works for Nigeria. So there's something we call, through the Nutrition 774 program, to be able to reward, so a reward-based mechanism, to reward local governments that are meeting their KPIs and the interventions. How many SBCC meetings have you had? How many seedlings, how many women have you empowered at the local government level with seedlings, whether it's livestock? How many have you trained? If you reach those marks through the National Nutrition Scorecards for local government and states, you get incentivized and recognized to do more. So these are ways that we can change our policies down to implementation, what works. I also wanted to mention about what the last speaker said as to one of the states, governors not knowing that polio was back in the state. I do agree with you, that actually happened, but that's why we leverage on the National Economic Council, where His Excellency the Vice President, Senator Kashim, chairs as in this role. And we use those platforms to bring governors, the subnational leaders, bring their attention to the fact that this is happening in your state. As a matter of fact, that happened with a few states, the 5 states, and we've set up an ad hoc committee on polio eradication chaired by the governor of Gombe, because they practically said they didn't know what was going on, and holding them accountable to say, you must deliver this with a certain timeline. And then the 774 is looking to roll out next year.
Thank you. For want of time, I would have loved to ask more questions, but apparently we can't get to all of them. But one thing is very paramount in my mind, and I would really like Lumika to answer that. Vaccine hesitation, vaccine hesitancy, because it's not just about nutrition, it's also poor health, right? So in 1 minute, in 30 seconds actually, what specific strategies can the media adopt to counter misinformation about vaccines and build trust amongst caregivers and parents in affected communities?
All right. One of the things we do a lot within the polio program is that we are always reacting. It's time for the media to support us to become proactive. Let's get the messages out there before the wrong messages come out. So the issue with wrong messaging, misinformation, is that every time you have to address it, to get a response to it, you also have to mention that wrong messaging again, which further reinforces it in the minds of people. So, but if you're proactive to get the message out there before it comes out, then of course you can avoid mentioning the negative aspect of that messaging. Another thing I want to say about media is that we are looking for partnerships. We are looking for partnerships with media outfits to help us pass this message. We need you. We need you guys to come on board. We want to see proposals. We want to see ideas. We want to see what you guys are willing to do with us, because we are looking for all forms of partnerships. So that's one thing we can do to address the issue of misinformation.
Thank you very much, esteemed ladies and gentlemen. It's been a pleasure. And I hope that this conversation helps set off a bonfire that protects our children.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator and distinguished panelists. I hope we're still following the conversations, but I have a comment. It looks as if the media is on trial today. That's what I truly think. And like, that's my constituency. So without sounding defensive, I need to, I think it's a two-way street, because the truth be told, if the media starts reporting some of the things that the other partners are not doing, it's a case of when we put the fire on top of the pot, can you stand the heat? That's a joke. Someone made a comment about the fact that like there are times when you would not invite media to cover stuff. I think the onus is on the messenger to ensure that he goes after the vehicle to deliver his message. Now, if you cast your minds back and if you look at what we're watching on TV these days, a lot of government organizations, state, local, and across, spend so much money on live coverages for roads that are being constructed, bridges that are being built. But the truth be told, I'm throwing it back at everyone. How many times has a state, federal, local, or agency of government called a press briefing or gone live to an event? So that's why I say it feels like the media is on trial. So I guess it's a two-way street. That's why we're partners. So we will do our work. But at the end of the day, how committed are we in ensuring that we're passing on our message? If you have something to tell us, then look for us if we don't come to you. And I truly think that, yes. Okay, we will take questions. I just said that as an aside because I needed to make sure that the media was not, because I'm a media person and I'm a gatekeeper. And I do know that there are times when I actually say to my team, let's humanize this story. So it's not as if we're not doing it. We now need to be more intentional about ensuring that stories to do with children, we can put center stage the way we do politics and breaking news and other things. So just thought to put fire under everyone and make sure that we're still engaged in what's going on. What do you think, Stanley?
Absolutely. And I think let's look at the assignment or the magnitude of the assignment that we have to carry out. UNICEF says that there are 3 things between now and 2050 that will affect children. I think one of those is the changing demographic. We're going to have a much younger population. The second of those is technology and how it changes. And the third is climate change, which is what we're going to be discussing in our next session. But another critical fact, by the year 2050, over a third of the children of this world will be living in 4 countries: China, India, Pakistan, and Nigeria. And many of these countries already have, regulations as per, I think China in particular, has regulations as per birth. But in Nigeria, this growth is actually coming from increased births, and people are living a lot longer. So we have a lot to do in order to protect our younger generation. I think there's a video on the impact of climate change on children. So let's have a look at that, and we'll come back for our next panel discussion, which will be the final for the afternoon.
Climate change.
Causes of climate change.
Yadda ake yin dashe, da yadda ake mixa taki, da yadda za a dasa shi, kuma an gaya mu amfani shi.
Abin da ya ɗauki hankalinmu shine in muka zo muka dasa shi zai kare mu daga iska mai ƙarfi wanda zai sa muna cikin aji ƙurar za ta ringa shigo mu.
Abin zai kare mu da muhallinmu daga iska da zaizayar ƙasa.
A gudunmuwa za mu ba su gudunmuwa ta huskoki da dama. Za mu yi ƙoƙari mu ga cewa mun wayar mu mutane kawuna sun ba da dama irin sarai itace da ake yi a rage shi.
When the wind started,
you will see that the area where they plant trees, the wind is not as much as the area where there is no plant. So that is why we thought planting trees at least at the back or to surround our school will now protect our school from collapsing.
Currently, we are having a mission of planting 300 moringa trees. It will have a benefit of food security, protecting the school structures, and also fight desert encroachment.
We cannot afford to leave out children from the climate change factor. They are a critical factor if we have to reverse the adverse effects of climate change on our environment.
Thank you very much. We will now introduce our panelists. But before we do that, let's remind everyone of the rules. We have 30 minutes, which have been allocated for this session, after which we'll have our questions and answers. In order for us to have a very rich and well-rounded conversation, let us please try to keep our responses as well as our questions as short and as succinct as possible. The first panelist that we'll be welcoming is a dedicated advocate for child rights and currently serves as the climate change manager at UNICEF in Nigeria. With extensive experience collaborating with partners in India, Kenya, Nepal, Nigeria, Vietnam, and Yemen, he plays a pivot addressing climate change and empowering youths. Let's give a warm round of applause to the climate change manager at UNICEF, Chiranjeebi Tiwari.
And joining him for this session is Titilope Ogutuga. He's a seasoned business leader with more than 20 years' experience in enhancing organizational competitiveness through strategic resource management and partnerships. Recognized for her contribution to sustainability, she's received multiple accolades, including being named one of the top 60 African women in development and women of excellence in sustainability. Titilope is a thought leader, speaker, and educator, and has been involved with Global Reporting Initiative and various academic institutions. She holds a degree in Arts and Humanities and an MBA, and is affiliated with numerous professional organizations. She's a mentor and social innovator. She also runs a non-for-profit and actively engages in humanitarian efforts. Thank you very much.
We also have a prominent Nigerian television presenter, radio personality, and public speaker, best known for hosting the morning show on Arise TV, where he explores a wide range of topics including politics, business, sports, and entertainment. With a dynamic presence and an engaging style, he has established himself as a key figure in the Nigerian media. Let us give a big welcome to Rufai Oseni.
Let me apologize in advance because I just asked for the pronunciation of this name, Olumide. I can't remember whether it's up or down. Is it Le or Le? Le. Okay. All right then. Okay, so Dr. Olabisi Deji Folutile is an esteemed Nigerian journalist. She has over 30 years' experience and is recognized for her impactful contributions to the field of education journalism. As the editor-in-chief of franktalknow.com and chief operating officer at af24news.com, she's been instrumental in addressing the challenges within Nigeria's educational system, including funding issues and campus violence. She's previously served as editor of Saturday Punch, where her leadership garnered over 30 prestigious awards. She holds a doctoral degree in communication studies and is a fellow of the Poynter Institute. She's also passionate about ensuring access to quality education for all Nigerians. Olabisi believes that education is a cornerstone of a thriving knowledge economy. Thank you very much for being with us.
And our moderator for this session is a distinguished journalist and the publisher of Real News, which is Nigeria's pioneering weekly investigative online news magazine. With over 32 years of experience, she has made history as the first female general editor of Newswatch, which is a leading news magazine in Lagos and is circulated across Nigeria. She's the inaugural female president of the Guide of Corporate Online Publishers, and she has a passion, Publishers Guild, Online Publishers Guild, okay, and is a passionate advocate for peace, justice, and equal opportunity. Let us welcome our moderator, Maureen Chigbo.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Maureen Chigbo. I'm delighted to be here to moderate this program, and please permit me to stand on existing protocol. We don't have time, so I will go straight to what we are here to discuss. We have had two previous panels that dwelt on security and child protection, and then the second one also on malnutrition, killer diseases, and how we can prevent them. Now we are focused on a problem, a challenge that is staring us in the face, and we've seen what happened not too long ago in Borno State when there was flooding, and you know the people who suffered most. So we're talking about climate change and how it affects children. So I have different people here, the media, the private sector, and the policymakers. So we would like to know precisely how we can have affirmative actions. So we focus on the solution, the affirmative actions to help to galvanize communication, to mitigate the effects of climate change on the vulnerable children in our country. So I start with you, sir. What has been the policies? What has been the policies, and how have you made it available, made it known to the media? Because you work with UNICEF, and we have seen the numbers here. So I'm starting with you because we want to know how you are communicating it before we know how the media can have more affirmative actions to report and cover climate issues that affect the children.
Thank you so much. Before I answer your question, I just want to have a very basic understanding of how climate change really impacts our children. As we just saw in the video before this session, climate change is about really the extreme weather patterns, and that leads to either the extreme flooding or extreme drought, heat wave kind of situations which ultimately impacts all the rights of the children. It directly relates to the survival rights of the children. It relates to their access to education, access to health, access to water, and access to each and every aspect of the well-being. So when we talk about climate change, we are really talking about child rights. This is very important for us to be really clear up. And with regard to how really UNICEF is contributing to bring that issue of climate change in the forefront, I would like to again give the example of this particular forum. Today, we have seen here, we have the representative of the media, we have the representative of the private sector, we have the government senior officials here, we have development partners and civil society. What is important really, if we want to talk about child rights and the climate change issue, is we all need to come together, have common understanding on how children are likely to be affected. You just gave the example of the Borno flood. We saw the video before that. So how children are likely to be impacted by the climate change, and what can we do as the entire society, because the entire society is affected. So really bringing those all stakeholders together, building common understanding, shared understanding of the challenges, opportunities, and the way forward. And of course, we contribute with the evidence and the success stories, not only from Nigeria, but also from the global perspective.
All right, thank you very much. You contribute success stories. Now, private sector, I'm coming to you. You deal with sustainability, and we know that global warming, carbon emissions, and the private sector, they are the key. They are the major people contributing. So how has the private sector been relating with the media to curb the excesses and to create awareness about global warming and to mitigate its effects on children?
Yes, good afternoon, and it's my pleasure to be here. The private sector is doing quite a lot in terms of first mitigating the impact of climate change, especially on children. One of the things that the private sector is most focused on is the conversion to renewable energy. We understand the impact of the contributions of the private sector to greenhouse gas emissions, carbon emissions, and a host of other things. And so the private sector is really focused on achieving that transition from fossil fuels to greener, more sustainable and renewable sources of energy. In terms of relationship with the media, I believe that the private sector relationship with the media is, quite a cordial one. In the private sector, we have quite a number of policies, regulations that guide our relationship with the media, based on, such values as transparency, credibility, and really highlighting the efforts of, the private sector in mitigating the impact of climate change. A few other things that the private sector is also doing are issues or helping to mitigate impacts related to climate change from initiatives such as WASH initiatives, where we're providing, water and sanitation and hygiene resources to the children who are most vulnerable, when it comes to climate change risks. And as a matter of fact, the private sector is also doing a lot around, building and collaborating on, more climate resilient infrastructure. So in building schools, what kind of schools are we building through our CSR initiatives? In providing healthcare, what kind of healthcare are we providing? And generally just also improving through education, climate literacy and advocacy. So that's the efforts that the private sector is making when it comes to mitigating the impacts of climate change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You talked about building resilient structures to withstand the adverse effects of climate change. I will move on now to my media colleagues. Rufai, in the last 5 years, we've witnessed considerable degradation in children's lives as a result of climate-related catastrophes, such as natural disasters, like flooding, like the one we have in Borno, which has led to also food crisis and food inflation we're having now, which is the root cause of malnutrition and other challenges faced by children. However, it appears what is not commensurate with this is the media's reports or actions in demanding affirmative action from the government and authorities to put right policies in place. Why is there this gap?
That's not true, and I'll tell you why. So apart from being on television, I also co-founded a radio station, Voice of the People. So I'm also a gatekeeper. Then I also co-founded VOA News Online. And I do a lot of investigative work. I also partnered with outlets like The Economist. And I remember about that Borno flood. And I was on top of that story. In fact, apart from Arise TV's exclusive work, we also got some exclusive pictures from The Economist that visited, and I work in partnership with Economist journalists out of Nigeria. And we did put the narrative out there. The first thing we did for those kids was to get justice. It was not totally about climate change, what happened in Borno. It was about corruption. And we reported the case of millions that have been earmarked for that Alu Dam to be done all this while that was not done. So we got justice by putting that issue on the front burner. Secondly, I used every media platform I have to be able to solicit funds. So I'm also a founder of Research and Mental Foundation. I do a lot of PR work. I built a library, built a healthcare center, do a lot of donations. That's part of my work. I know how much I raised for those kids out there to be able to send things out for them, also partnering with other charities. So that's the second one on the philanthropic front. Thirdly, most importantly, we also humanize the story across all of our platforms and all of that. We had individual interviews with families that were affected. And we went through the 3 tripods, did the journalistic work, brought out the root cause of what happened, which was the neglect on the Alu Dam that burst his bank. Thirdly, also helped solicit funds across the radio and across all my platforms to be able to ensure that they get some succor. And we actually made donations.
Okay, was there any demand for affirmative action from the government?
Yes.
Okay, go
We
ahead.
told them to take responsibility. In all my editorial, all my commentary every time, we told them to take responsibility for these actions and for things they ought to do for children.
Did government respond?
Government, I mean, shall I tell you, the same government that told you Port Harcourt refinery was ready and we are seeing in
Okay,
that's happening.
when government didn't respond, did Arise follow up to remind
Oh,
government?
yes. Oh, yes, we did. We kept on putting it on the front burner. We kept on talking about it every single time. We pressed them. We called people. We got out to people. We reached out to the governor involved. In fact, the other donations that were made, we ensured that the governor of that state gave the donation to the people. So we didn't just make donation, we ensured that it got to the last mile.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate all the efforts you've made. And now, my sister, every time we see climate-related disasters, children are the worst affected, left homeless, exposed to abuse, and often forgotten in the broader crisis response. Why does it seem like the media focuses more attention on sensational stories than on demanding accountability for these children's safety? Are we too comfortable telling stories of suffering without pushing for systemic change?
Thank you so much. I'm also privileged to be here today. I think I will follow the line of my previous colleagues that have been speaking on this issue when it comes to talking about the media and expectations from the media. Now, sometimes we just forget that we are in a sick country where almost every aspect of the country is sick, including even the media that we are now relying upon to do the magic that all of us want, right? Now, I want you to get me clearly. When you are in this kind of situation, you expect too much from people that are already almost probably giving their blood to do their best in the interest of the country. Now you talk about sensationalism. I will not agree that we sensationalize. Like, as far back as 2019, I did a piece on Nigeria breeding children of anger every day. And in that piece, I spoke about the plight of Nigerian children, the ones in the Northeast, Northwest, and in fact, across the nations, across the nation. You talk about that, but you also challenge government to take responsibility. But what do you see? Nothing much comes out of that. We talk about Borno flood now because it was big. But do you know that even in Bayelsa State, I think for the last 3 months, children were not in school due to flooding. It was reported. The media reported it. But what can we get? What have we gotten from such reports? If they will resume, if those children will resume, they are likely to resume maybe November or December. Throughout the rainy season, they were at home. And I was told that that is the usual practice in that state, and probably in other riverine states of Nigeria. And we do our reports, but we are not the ones that we also implement action. Ours is to report.
Okay.
Now, the government officials that came here, you know, they were also talking about media and media. From one of them, you could even get that some of their events, the media are not even invited to these events. So how do you expect the media to report what is not, where is not even present? Do you get? Then another thing that I want to focus on again is the issue of accountability when it comes to even funding of all of these child issues in Nigeria. The issue of the Safe School Initiative comes to my mind right now. I think there could also be climate change aspect in that whole initiative because there are different aspects to it. But do you know that all the funds that we got during that period cannot and is yet to be accounted for up till now as we speak? And when I did my research, the funds were in millions of dollars. Perhaps the only one that is being spent the way it should is the one that UNICEF is spending on behalf of global donor agencies.
Okay, you raise an important issue of accountability. So who is to be held responsible, the government, UNICEF, or the media?
Is the government.
So who is to hold government accountable?
We
are we doing that?
We are holding.
Because that's part of the affirmative action we are here to.
Yes,
are
we are
we
holding.
Seriously holding government accountable and then making government do what it has to do to improve the lot of children?
Well, I think we can do more.
Okay.
Obviously, we can do far, far more than what we are doing right now. Because in the case of the school initiative program, the case was brought to the National Assembly. A panel was set up to investigate the spending and all of that. And I guess where we just stopped was reporting the panel report and all of that. And at the end of the day, when you try to follow up and nothing comes out of it, other things are already there.
Okay.
You have other problems that you are focusing on, and somehow you tend to lose track of certain things. But I think we can do more. But I will also say that the government officials that are also interested in the welfare and the well-being of the Nigerian child should also volunteer more information.
That's good. Thank you very much. Government must volunteer information, because I listened to the other woman talking, and I actually realized that we talked about coverage. When the governors come, the media come with the governors to cover, and then the governors leave. At the end of the day, they don't report what transpired at the meeting. Should we make efforts on the part of the media to ensure that we don't just cover the opening ceremony, but at least report what transpired at the meeting?
Do you
because that's where...
Do you also believe that you can send a reporter to cover an event, and that reporter will come to the newsroom without filing story? I don't think so. They may not be satisfied with the level of reportage, but not that they don't. So I think we can, if we engage in more collaborative efforts, we will also know that stories like this are not just one-off stories. They should be things that we should be working on from time to time. Even engaging in meetings with journalists, editors, to ensure that these issues are brought to the front line at every point in time. Because the truth of the matter is that, you know, you may just pardon my language when I said Nigeria is sick. What I mean is that there are so many issues in the country that is just contesting for the time of the journalists and the media. So the more we just work around all of these things, the more we'll be helped to really focus on things that pertain to Nigerian children. Because, look, I'm so passionate about this issue.
Okay, I know you are very passionate about it, but I have to go to the private sector right now to ask one more question. How is the private sector, madam, working with the media to project the issues around global warming, climate change? Do you think there is a gap, and how can that gap be closed? Any affirmative action that can be taken by the private sector? If you listen, when the first panel spoke, they talked about media being business, and private sector makes profit, and media wants to make profit doing its own business. How is the private sector spending or putting aside some money to project climate issues in the media?
Okay, so when it comes to the private sector and the many initiatives of the private sector, I think that the objective is what should be at the fore. And one of the things that the private sector prioritizes is really the solutions. So we have the climate risks, we have the challenges, we understand that the children are the most vulnerable. What is the private sector focusing on? The solutions. And that is why organizations like mine, IHS Towers, is partnering with UNICEF, for example, and a host of other development organizations to begin to bridge that gap. Now, when it comes to the media, and this is where, you know, we need to begin to have conversations around shared value. Media organizations can also be private organizations. As a matter of fact, many of the media organizations in Nigeria are private organizations who are also, you know, driven by some level of profit, maybe not as the, you know, other parts of the private sector. It's important that, you know, irrespective of the, you know, the objectives of the private sector or the media, you know, the ultimate goal is what we put at the center of what we want to achieve. And one of the things that we can do to drive this level of, you know, inclusion or partnership is to begin to focus on what the material issues are. So, for example, the private sector is implementing, you know, child-focused or children-focused CSR initiatives. What level of partnership can the media bring on board? For example, a media partnership that helps to drive awareness, advocacy, you know, and such level of storytelling that helps us to bring the human angle of those stories out, you know, in the public domain. That level of partnership from the private sector and the media is what will help us to amplify many of the initiatives that the private sector is driving. But until we create those win-win situations, both for the private sector and the media organizations, we would not go far. So my recommendation and my suggestion today is there are different kinds of partnerships, there are different levels of collaboration. We need to begin to drive more media partnerships that help to amplify the stories of the initiative that the private sector, you know, is focusing on. And I like what Mr. Oseni mentioned earlier. Even his own personal efforts, you can see, you know, how that transcends his immediate environment. So when we begin to, you know, identify issues and see solutions from not just a profit-driven mindset, but a more global Nigerian child mindset, we're able to achieve more and we're able to scale more impact.
Okay, do you think that it's a moral imperative on the part of the private sector to do more for Nigerian children?
Well, I believe that the Nigerian private sector is doing a lot already. The question of scale, may be something, may be discussed for another day. We have the moral right, I agree, because when we talk about the SDGs, for example, and we are focusing on leave no one behind, children are inclusive, the private sector is inclusive, the development sector is inclusive, the government sector is inclusive. So when we really talk about leaving no one behind, for example, for the SDGs, all hands must be on deck, and we all have a moral responsibility to ensure that that happens by 2030.
Okay, strictly from a private sector perspective, what would be your key recommendation to the media on how it can strengthen its advocacy reports on improving the lot of the Nigerian child?
Well, information technology offers us quite a number of solutions. We need to simplify many of the things that we share. Back in the days, I know that, and I know that quite a number, for quite a number of people, physical newspapers, are still the thing, for the traditional media. But these days, people read online. So in terms of, leveraging information technology, there are quite a number of opportunities that, we can leverage with the media to tell more of the stories. Our style of storytelling also is something that we need to improve upon. And one of the things that I'd like to bring to the fore is the level of partnership. So there are security issues, there are climate-related issues, there are nutrition issues. How about the private sector coming together? So, for example, a FMCG company who is focused on maybe milk or who produces milk is coming to bring food to children in a particular school, and then a telecoms company like mine is providing access to internet and all of that.
Okay, before we round up, I will give the last chance to the UNICEF representative to speak on, do you genuinely view or consider media as a collaborative ally in the fight against climate change and protecting our vulnerable children?
Definitely, yes. The answer is yes, but let me just go one step beyond that. Like we're discussing about reporting on a reactive mode after an disaster happens or climate-related real disaster happens. What I think the Nigerian media can do is to be more proactive. When I say being proactive, as much as climate change really looks really bit complex in terms of the conceptual, but the solutions are not complex. Just to give an example, solutions could be as simple as planting trees, really managing plastic waste, making those healthcare facilities safe enough to be able to continue services in the event of flooding, making schools really accessible to the children in the event of flood. So in terms of the solutions, they're not that difficult. But what is important is what I say generally happening in Nigeria and also globally is that sometimes we focus on really reactive information, reactive really news items. Why I'm really talking about the proactiveness here is, if you look at the Nigerian population, 2/3 of our population is really the youth and the children. If we can really raise the awareness of the youth and children proactively, engage them and really identifying those solutions like tree planting, plastic waste management, this kind of things can be easily managed by this 2/3 of the population of Nigeria without even a lot of financial resources being required for that. Same really applies with our private sector thinking. It's not only about corporate social responsibility. It is about the sustainability of the business themselves. If there is like the flood like we just witnessed in Borno, it happens. All the businesses, local businesses are affected there. So it's not about just being corporate, really from a corporate social responsibility perspective. It's about really contributing to society while sustaining our own businesses.
Right.
So really I want to stop here, but I think there is a lot we can do together, and UNICEF would be happy to work with.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm sure this panel has done justice to discussing the impact of climate change on the socio-cultural growth of children in Nigeria. The conversation continues, and I want to thank my panelists, Dr. Folutile. Thank you. Thank you. And sorry, and Oguntula, thank you very much. Sorry? You didn't get it. You will get. They will ask questions now and you will get. But you got a lot of chance to actually talk. All right.
It went through, but it's fine, you know.
Go ahead, Steve. Well, you just have a second to say what you have to say. Go ahead.
Is, in all fairness, I'm sorry to bust your bubble. The private sector does not know how to collaborate with the media. The day you get it right, the day we'll save ourselves all these conversations. You do not know how to collaborate with the media. You see things by your own verticals. You need to start seeing things from the media's own verticals.
On that note, we said thank you all for participating in this panel session. Thank you very much. I remain Maureen Chibu.
Could we please, our panel members, please remain on stage for a few minutes. Please, just for a few minutes. I would like to ask our other dignitaries to join us on stage for a quick photo session. Front row, and all of our other presenters and panelists. All of our panelists, please join us on stage. closing. Let's go just go for the closing.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of this engagement. Ladies and gentlemen, lend me your ears, please. We've come to the end of this engagement, which basically has shed a lot of light as to the challenges our children face and the fact that our children are the next generation. Would like to thank everyone who took the time to come here. And just before our closing statements, Stanley, what are we doing?
We're going to have closing statement? Okay. Yes. All right. So we're going to have our closing comments to bring this session to an end. Ladies and gentlemen, let us hear from Mr. Lanre Ido. I know we're pretty tired, but not tired enough that we shouldn't give him a round of applause. Thank you.
My job is really very, very simple. It is to thank you all for being here today. And so if I just say thank you, I think I will have finished the assignment. But that will not do justice to what we have experienced today. I'd like to begin by saying thank you to UNICEF. Thank you to the Guild of Editors. Thank you to DAME. Just for some background information, these are three partners who are united in the focus on getting issues concerning the Nigerian child especially more awareness, more mention in the media. There's a commitment to do that for the next 2 years. And so what we are here today is just another step in that direction. And I must say that from what we have seen today, I think it is a right step in the right direction. If you agree with me, let's appreciate the partners. A number of issues have been raised today. One question that I believe has crossed our minds today is that, can we say that the media is on trial? I don't think that was what the partners set out to do. We recognize the role of the media. We recognize the power, the reach of the media in terms of stimulating conversation in society. So a lot is expected of the media, the same way a lot is expected of the government, whether at the federal, state, or even the local government level. And a lot is expected of the civil society organizations, the academia, and everyone that can rightly be called a stakeholder in this issue of giving due attention to issues concerning the Nigerian child. I think we have succeeded in letting our media professionals appreciate the enormity of the responsibility on their shoulders. I have read, beyond what we have discussed here, I've read a lot of stories showing that there is genuine commitment, genuine interest on the part of the media to give attention to issues of the Nigerian child. But there are limitations. Some of the limitations have been highlighted, some have been discussed, but I think I can elaborate on maybe one or two. It is a partnership of stakeholders in society. The media does not operate in isolation. The media does not have a monopoly of wisdom. So those who have messages that they want the media to feature, that they want the media to mainstream, they have a big responsibility also to ensure that they tickle the fancy of the media. They understand that they position their messages in a way that the media cannot ignore. So, we may not be able to go into those steps. There may be another opportunity to go into that in detail. But I just want to let us know that it is not as if the media sets out to shut out issues concerning the child. There are a number of factors, some economic, some proprietary, that affect what the media puts forward as issues before it's published. Then the question is also about capacity. What is the quality of attention? What is the quality of reporting? You can only go as far as what you know. I said the media does not have a monopoly of wisdom. There's a lot that the media does not know. So, if we are building a relationship, we are nurturing a partnership, we have to do a lot more by way of sharing information. If you use the UNICEF example, for instance, the amount of information that they churn out on a daily basis is enormous. But that doesn't stop there. When we receive the information, the way we can take ownership of it and make it ours is to do more research, more backgrounding, and take the story further than what they have given us. They play a lot by putting out statistics. How do we humanize the statistics? What do the statistics mean? And how can we make them connect well to our various audiences? I think it is when we do that, when we're able to, two examples, when we're able to expand the focus of the stories, that then when they even read it, they may not quite recognize it as an original story that came from UNICEF. Because what? You have added more, you've done more work into it, and you've served it in a fresh manner that makes it look like it was your own idea originally. That way, these stories will be more authentic than they are now. Again, there were some discussions on whether we sensationalize. When we say we now, we're talking about the media. Sensationalism is not strange to the media. It's part of what it does. But beyond signaling issues, what we want the media to do more is to go further, to add more depth, to expand our understanding. Lastly, the media is in the business of audience chasing. If you have a medium and nobody is patronizing you, very, very soon you will be out of business. So has a legitimate interest in looking for things that will resonate with its audiences. And so we are actually helping the media when we make story ideas, when we give them opportunity to have content that they can use. The child, we have said, is the future of the country. When you have a population of maybe 60, 70% being 60 years and above, and then 30% below, you know that there's a problem there. So we also have to tailor our own messages to appeal to the younger folk. I think we need to do more of that than we have done to date. Because what we want at the end of the day is to enrich the quality of experience of our young ones. We do not want them to be victims of a stolen childhood. We do not want them to grow up to be maladjusted children, emotionally, psychologically, and otherwise. So we cannot stress enough that the call for solution journalism is a good call, and it is one that we should all embrace. I know that there are some students in this hall. I think quite a number of them are from the NIJ. Because of time, we have not been able to hear from them. So let me just use this opportunity. Maybe one or two questions or comments. Does any one of you have anything to say on what has happened here today? NIJ students or any other student that is in this hall? Just raise your hand if you have. Okay, number one. Any other one? Two. Can we pass the mic, or would you rather come forward? Okay, please come forward. Number one. Make it short, sharp. Sorry.
Yeah, my name is James Taylor Babatunde from NIJ, PGD student, current governor. So I just want to add to what one of our panelists said concerning some private sector not inviting media to a program, of which I witnessed some that was 2 months ago, where there is a program under Ministry of Human Affairs. I went there because my neighbor is part of those that was registered among the training. They used to do like 3 months or 4 weeks program. Then I went to meet those in charge. That why are we not? I didn't see any media, people here. And she deliberately told me that we don't want media in this garden. I was like, you can't be doing such a beautiful program like this, organized by Lagos State Governor. So how will the people of Ikeja, Lagos, know that the governor is trying, have been trying and doing the Memorials program? When you just call your own personal photographer and videographer in the event, he specifically asked the security to bounce me out. But I won't mention name. I know the names of the person, but it's unfair. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Number two, quickly. Maybe sometimes some of these organizers, they've had bad experience from the media, and so they want to control the narrative by putting the stories together themselves and sharing it in the media.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hope protocol is duly observed. My name is Temilade Alunge, HND1 Strategic Communications, Nigerian Institute of Journalism. All right, so I actually have a question. I followed through with all the panel section, but I'm concerned, why don't we have any non-profits seated here? Because I believe that most of this engagement, the government agencies, the private sector, they move fundings into the non-profits. And these partnerships are moved with non-profits to execute projects, and they are the ones that bring up these initiatives. We have all of them. So I feel that if the media wants partnership with anybody, then the partnership should also include the non-profits seated here. So my concern is, why don't we have non-profits seated here also telling us their challenge, why they are not sharing their stories, the humanized stories with the media, or why we have not been able to connect with them. And then we are coming up as new students or as media professionals can also learn what the problem is and how we can tell the stories. Thank you.
Thank you, Temilade. I'm sure there will be a response to your observation. Well, I did say that if all I did was to say thank you, my job will have been done. So I want to come back to that thank you. And you are going to do something with me. We are going to sing. And it's a very simple song to sing. we use those two words, thank you. So here we go. Thank you, thank you, thank you. 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 Now you have to sing it on your own. Oh yeah? Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much to Stella. Thank you so much to Stanley. Thank you all, everyone, for coming. This is the end of the show. Thank you.